Sarah Martinez had always been different from other girls in her small Texas town. While her classmates spent summers at the mall or by the pool, she was running 5 miles before sunrise and doing push-ups in her garage. Her father, a retired Marine, had taught her that strength came from discipline, not from size or gender. At 18, Sarah made a decision that shocked everyone who knew her. She announced she was joining the Navy with one goal in mind: becoming a SEAL. Her high school guidance counselor laughed. Her mother cried. Her boyfriend called her crazy. Even her father, who had always supported her dreams, looked worried. "Sweetheart," he said one evening as they sat on their back porch, "I've seen what that training does to grown men. Big, tough men who thought they could handle anything. Most of them don't make it." Sarah looked at him with the same determined eyes he'd seen since she was 5 years old, refusing to give up on tying her shoes until she got it perfect. "Dad, you taught me that the only limits we have are the ones we accept. I'm not accepting any." The journey to even qualify for SEAL training took 2 years. Sarah had to excel in her regular Navy duties while secretly preparing her body and mind for the most brutal military training program in the world. She studied every book about SEAL training she could find. She learned about the cold water torture, the sleep deprivation, the constant pressure designed to break even the strongest individuals. Every morning at 0400, while her shipmates slept, Sarah was in the gym. Every evening, she practiced holding her breath underwater until her lungs burned. She ran until her legs shook, lifted weights until her muscles screamed, and pushed through pain that would have stopped most people. Her commanding officers noticed her dedication. Some were impressed. Others were skeptical. Martinez, Captain Thompson told her during a routine evaluation, "You're one hell of a sailor. But SEAL training isn't just about being tough. It's about surviving when everything inside you wants to quit. Sir, with respect, I've been preparing for this my entire life. Not just physically, but mentally. I know what I'm getting into." Captain Thompson studied her file. Perfect fitness scores, top marks in all her training, recommendations from every instructor she'd worked with. But it seemed promising candidates wash out in the first week of SEAL training. The statistics were brutal, only about 25% of candidates made it through. For women attempting the program, the numbers were even worse. "Martinez, I'm going to ask you one question, and I want an honest answer. Why do you want this? And don't give me some speech about serving your country. Every sailor here serves their country. What makes you think you need to be a SEAL?" Sarah had been asked this question dozens of times, but she'd never answered it completely honestly. She thought about her childhood, growing up in a house where her father's military service was respected but her own ambitions were often dismissed because she was female. She thought about every time someone had told her she couldn't do something because of her gender. "Sir, I want to be a SEAL because I know I can be one. Not despite being a woman, but because everything that makes me who I am has prepared me for this. I've spent my whole life proving that I belong in places where people say I don't fit. This is just the next place." The approval process took months. Military brass debated whether to allow her to attempt training. Politicians weighed in. Media attention began building, though Sarah tried to avoid it. She didn't want to be a symbol or a pioneer. She just wanted to be a SEAL. Finally, the call came. She was accepted into basic underwater demolition SEAL training, known simply as BUD-S. She would report to Coronado, California, in 6 weeks. The news spread quickly through her unit. Some sailors congratulated her. Others whispered that she was in for a rude awakening. The night before she left for California, Sarah's father found her in the garage, doing one final workout. She was running through the same routine she'd done every night for 2 years: burpees, pull-ups, sit-ups, and breathing exercises. "You know," he said, leaning against the doorframe, "when you were little, you used to say you wanted to be a superhero. I always told you superheroes weren't real." Sarah paused her workout and looked at him. "What changed your mind?" "I realized I was wrong. Superheroes are real. They are just called different things. Some are called firefighters. Some are called doctors. And some, he smiled, are called Navy SEALs. The flight to San Diego gave Sarah time to think about what lay ahead. She'd read every account of SEAL training she could find. She knew about Hell Week, the 5-day period of constant training with minimal sleep that broke most candidates. She knew about the cold Pacific Ocean that would test her body's limits. She knew about instructors whose job was to find her breaking point and push her past it. But she also knew something about herself that the instructors didn't know yet. She had no breaking point. Every challenge in her life had only made her stronger. Every person who had told her she couldn't achieve something had only increased her determination to prove them wrong. As the plane descended toward San Diego, Sarah looked out at the Pacific Ocean. Soon, she would be spending hours in that cold, dark water. She would be pushed to physical and mental limits that most people couldn't imagine. Instructors would try every method they knew to make her quit. She smiled. They had no idea what they were dealing with. The taxi ride from the airport to Naval Amphibious Base Coronado took 30 minutes. Sarah spent the time reviewing everything she'd learned about what to expect. The first phase of training would focus on physical conditioning. Running, swimming, calisthenics, and obstacle courses designed to build basic fitness to SEAL standards. The second phase would introduce combat diving and underwater demolition. She'd learn to operate in conditions that killed untrained individuals. The failure rate in this phase was high, as candidates discovered that being tough on land meant nothing underwater when panic set in. The third phase would cover land warfare, including weapons training, tactics, and survival skills. By the time candidates reached this phase, they'd already proven they could survive almost anything. The final tests would determine who had the intelligence and judgment to operate as a SEAL in real combat situations. But before any of that came the initial processing and evaluation. Medical examinations, psychological assessments, and basic fitness tests to ensure candidates met minimum standards before training began. Sarah knew she'd pass these easily. Her real test would begin when the instructors started trying to break her will. As the base came into view, Sarah felt the same calm focus she'd experienced before every major challenge in her life. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't excited. She was ready. The taxi stopped at the main gate. Sarah paid the driver, shouldered her sea bag, and walked toward the entrance. The guard at the gate looked at her paperwork and pointed toward a building in the distance. "First day of BUDS?" he asked. "Yes, sir." He studied her for a moment. "Good luck. You're going to need it." Sarah thanked him and walked toward the building. She wasn't thinking about luck. Luck was what people relied on when they hadn't prepared properly. Sarah had spent 2 years preparing for this moment. She was ready for whatever came next. Inside the processing building, she found a room full of other candidates. All men, all looking nervous or trying to hide their nervousness. Conversation stopped when she entered. Some candidates stared openly. Others tried to pretend they hadn't noticed her. A petty officer at the front desk looked up when Sarah approached. "Name?" "Petty Officer 2nd Class Sarah Martinez, reporting for BUDS training." The petty officer checked his list, found her name, and handed her a packet of paperwork. "Take a seat. Briefing starts in 20 minutes." Sarah found an empty chair and began reviewing the paperwork. Standard military forms, mostly. Medical waivers, emergency contacts, acknowledgements that she understood the risks involved in training. The room was quiet except for the rustling of papers and occasional whispered conversations. She looked around at her fellow candidates. They were all physically fit, all motivated enough to volunteer for the most difficult military training in the world. In a few months, most of them would be gone, eliminated by training that pushed human endurance beyond normal limits. A door at the front of the room opened, and an instructor entered. He was exactly what Sarah had expected, tall, muscular, with the bearing of someone who'd survived everything the military could throw at him. His uniform bore the SEAL trident, indicating he'd successfully completed the training these candidates were about to attempt. "Gentlemen," he began, then paused when he noticed Sarah. "And, lady. Welcome to BUDS. My name is Senior Chief Ramirez. For the next 6 months, I'm going to be your worst nightmare and your best teacher." He walked slowly around the room, making eye contact with each candidate. "Look around this room. Statistics say that 8 out of 10 of you will quit before training is complete. The other 2 might graduate if they are lucky and tough enough." Senior Chief Ramirez stopped in front of Sarah's chair. "Some of you are here because you want to serve your country. Some are here to prove something to yourselves. Some are here because you think being a SEAL will make you special." He continued walking. "Let me tell you what will make you special. Surviving training that's designed to break you. Pushing through when every instinct tells you to quit. Finding strength you didn't know you had when you've used up all the strength you thought you had." The briefing continued for an hour, covering schedules, expectations, and the basic rules that would govern their lives for the next 6 months. No quitting during training exercises. No helping other candidates who were struggling. No complaining about conditions or treatment. "One more thing," Senior Chief Ramirez said as the briefing ended. "Starting tomorrow morning, we begin finding out who belongs here and who doesn't. Be at the beach at 0430 for your first workout. Don't be late." As candidates filed out of the room, Sarah felt some of them watching her. She could imagine what they were thinking. Some probably wondered if she was tough enough. Others might be concerned that having a woman in their class would somehow make training easier or different. They would all learn soon enough that nothing about BUDS training was easy, regardless of who was participating. That evening, Sarah checked into the barracks room she'd been assigned. It was basic but clean: a single bed, a small desk, and a locker for her belongings. She unpacked quickly, organizing her gear exactly as her father had taught her years ago. Everything in its place, everything ready for immediate use. She laid out her workout clothes for the morning, checked her running shoes, and reviewed the training schedule one more time. Tomorrow would begin 6 months of the most intensive training program in the world. She dreamed about this moment for years, worked toward it for the past 2 years, and now it was finally here. Before going to sleep, Sarah called her father. "I made it," she said when he answered. "Training starts tomorrow. How do you feel?" "Ready." There was a pause. "Sarah, I want you to know something. Whatever happens in the next few months, I'm proud of you. You've already accomplished more than most people dream of attempting. Dad, I appreciate that, but I'm not here to attempt anything. I'm here to become a Navy SEAL." After the call, Sarah set her alarm for 0400 and tried to sleep. Her mind was calm, but her body was alert with anticipation. Tomorrow, she would begin proving that everything she'd believed about herself was true. At 0430 the next morning, Sarah stood on the beach at Coronado with 23 other candidates. The Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly before them, dark and cold in the pre-dawn light. Senior Chief Ramirez and 3 other instructors waited nearby, watching as the candidates formed up in ranks. "Welcome to your first day of BUDS," Senior Chief Ramirez announced. "Today, we begin separating those who belong here from those who are wasting our time." He gestured toward the ocean. "That water is 58 degrees. Most of you have never experienced sustained exposure to water that cold. Some of you will discover that you don't handle it well. When that happens, you're welcome to ring the bell." Sarah looked toward a brass bell mounted on a post near the beach. She'd read about the bell in every account of SEAL training. 3 rings meant a candidate was quitting. 3 rings meant admission that the training was too difficult to continue. "Before we get in the water," Senior Chief Ramirez continued, "we're going to warm up with some basic calisthenics. Jumping jacks, push-ups, sit-ups, and running. Nothing you haven't done before." For the next hour, the candidates performed exercises that would have been challenging for most people but were routine for individuals fit enough to qualify for SEAL training. Sarah kept pace easily, as did most of the other candidates. This was the warm-up, not the actual test. When the calisthenics ended, Senior Chief Ramirez pointed toward the water. Time to get acquainted with your new best friend. The Pacific Ocean is going to be your training partner for the next 6 months. It's cold, it's unforgiving, and it doesn't care about your comfort. The candidates waded into the surf. The water was shockingly cold, exactly as advertised. Sarah felt her breath catch as the waves reached her waist, then her chest. Her body's natural response was to get out immediately, to escape the cold that made her muscles clench and her skin burn. Instead, she waded deeper. Link arms, one of the instructors called. Form a line facing the beach. Standing chest deep in the frigid Pacific, linked arm in arm with candidates on either side of her, Sarah felt the true beginning of her SEAL training. This wasn't about physical fitness or running times or how many pull-ups she could do. This was about willpower. This was about choosing to endure discomfort that her body desperately wanted to escape. The instructors kept them in the water for 20 minutes. Some candidates began shivering violently. Others lost feeling in their extremities. Sarah felt all of these things, but she also felt something else, the absolute certainty that she belonged exactly where she was. The second week of training brought new challenges that separated confident candidates from truly prepared ones. Sarah watched 3 more classmates ring the bell after failing to complete ocean swims in rough surf. The water temperature hadn't changed, but the demands had increased dramatically. Each morning began with a 4-mile run along the beach, followed by calisthenics that pushed muscle groups to failure. After breakfast, candidates faced obstacle courses designed to test coordination, strength, and problem-solving under pressure. The afternoon brought pool training, where they learned combat swimming techniques in controlled conditions before facing the open ocean. But it was the cold water exposure that became the defining element of early training. Every day, candidates spent longer periods in the Pacific. Instructors monitored them for signs of hypothermia while pushing them to extend their tolerance for conditions that could kill untrained individuals. Sarah discovered that her body adapted to the cold more quickly than most of her classmates. While others shivered violently after 15 minutes in the water, she maintained better control of her movements and breathing. The advantage wasn't huge, but in training where margins for error were thin, any edge mattered. Martinez, Senior Chief Ramirez called one morning after a particularly challenging ocean session. "Stay behind for a moment." Sarah approached the instructor, wondering if she'd made some mistake during the exercise. Instead, Senior Chief Ramirez studied her with what appeared to be professional curiosity. "How are you handling the water work?" "Fine, Senior Chief. No problems. I've been watching you." Most candidates show obvious signs of distress after 20 minutes in 50-degree water. "You seem comfortable out there." Sarah considered her response carefully. She didn't want to appear overconfident, but she also wouldn't lie about her capabilities. "Senior Chief, I grew up swimming in lakes and rivers. Cold water doesn't bother me as much as it bothers some people. Lakes and rivers in Texas aren't 50 degrees. No, Senior Chief. But I've been preparing for this training for 2 years. I practiced cold water exposure as part of my preparation." Senior Chief Ramirez nodded slowly. "Good. Because next week we start Hell Week preparation, and the water work gets a lot more challenging." Hell Week was the legendary test that broke most SEAL candidates. 5 days of continuous training with minimal sleep, designed to push human endurance beyond normal limits. Candidates who survived Hell Week had proven they possessed the mental toughness required for SEAL operations. Sarah had studied every available account of Hell Week. She knew that sleep deprivation would be the primary weapon used against candidates. After 2 or 3 days without real rest, decision-making became impaired, emotions became unstable, and pain tolerance decreased dramatically. The cold water exposure during Hell Week was particularly brutal. Candidates spent hours in the surf, often at night, while instructors created scenarios that required complex teamwork under conditions of extreme stress. Many candidates quit during these sessions, unable to function effectively when hypothermia combined with exhaustion. But Hell Week was still 3 weeks away. First, Sarah had to survive the preparatory training that eliminated candidates who wouldn't last 5 days of intensive testing. The obstacle courses became more complex, incorporating rope climbs, wall traversals, and cargo net exercises that required upper body strength many candidates lacked. Sarah's 2 years of preparation showed here. While some classmates struggled with pull-ups and rope climbs, she completed these exercises with energy to spare. Swimming tests intensified as well. Candidates had to demonstrate proficiency in various strokes over increasing distances. The basic requirement was a 500-meter swim in 12.5 minutes while wearing boots and utilities. Sarah completed this easily, but instructors immediately increased the distance and decreased the time allowed. The minimum standards are what we expect from average sailors, Instructor Thompson explained during a pool session. SEAL candidates need to exceed minimums by significant margins. If you're barely passing these tests now, you won't survive combat conditions. Pool work also included underwater swimming exercises that tested breath control and comfort in aquatic environments. Candidates learned to swim long distances without surfacing, navigate underwater obstacles, and perform complex tasks while holding their breath. Sarah excelled at these exercises as well. Her childhood spent diving in Texas lakes had developed lung capacity and underwater confidence that served her well. While some candidates struggled with 25-meter underwater swims, she routinely completed 50-meter distances without difficulty. But the instructors weren't impressed by individual excellence. SEAL operations required teamwork, and candidates who couldn't work effectively with others were eliminated regardless of their personal capabilities. Being a tough individual doesn't make you a SEAL, Senior Chief Ramirez explained during a team-building exercise. SEALs operate in small units where every member's life depends on every other member. We need people who can be part of a team, not heroes who work alone. This aspect of training proved more challenging for Sarah than the physical requirements. Not because she couldn't work with others, but because some of her male classmates had difficulty accepting her as an equal team member. They weren't openly hostile, but subtle patterns emerged that could undermine team effectiveness. During one boat carrying exercise, where teams of 6 candidates had to transport a heavy rubber boat over obstacles while running, Sarah noticed that her teammates consistently placed her in positions that required less strength. They meant well, trying to help her succeed, but the result was that she wasn't being tested at the same level as male candidates. "Listen," she told her team during a break between exercises, "I appreciate that you want to help, but I need to carry the same load as everyone else. If I can't do that, I shouldn't be here." Petty Officer Johnson, the team's unofficial leader, looked uncomfortable. "Martinez, we're just trying to make sure the team succeeds. If you get injured or can't keep up, we all fail." "Johnson, I've been keeping up fine. Let me prove I can handle the full workload, or let me fail honestly. But don't protect me from the same tests you're taking." The conversation was awkward, but it established an important principle. Sarah wanted to succeed or fail based on her actual capabilities, not on modified standards that might create doubt about her qualifications. The boat-carrying exercises became a turning point in her relationship with her teammates. When they finally let her take her turn carrying the boat's full weight, she performed as well as anyone else. When they stopped trying to shield her from difficult tasks, she proved she could handle them. By the end of the 3rd week, mutual respect had developed. Her teammates stopped treating her differently, and she stopped having to assert her capabilities in every exercise. But other challenges emerged as training intensity increased. The sleep deprivation that was a preview of Hell Week began affecting everyone's performance. Candidates started making mistakes during exercises that could have been dangerous in real operations. One morning, during a particularly difficult ocean swim in rough surf, candidate Williams began struggling about halfway through the course. The waves were larger than usual, and the current was strong enough to push swimmers off their intended route. Williams was a strong swimmer under normal conditions, but the combination of fatigue, cold water, and challenging surf overwhelmed him. Sarah saw him fall behind the main group, then saw him begin to panic as he realized he couldn't keep up. SEAL training rules prohibited candidates from helping each other during individual exercises. Assistance could result in elimination for both candidates. But Sarah also knew that panic in rough surf could quickly become a life-threatening emergency. She made a split-second decision to modify her own swim route slightly, moving closer to Williams without obviously helping him. Her presence seemed to calm him enough to regain his swimming rhythm and complete the exercise. After they reached the beach, Williams approached her privately. "Thank you for what you did out there. I know you could have gotten in trouble for helping." "I didn't help," Sarah replied. "I just swam my own course. What you did with that information was up to you." But Senior Chief Ramirez had been watching the exercise from a boat, and he'd noticed Sarah's route adjustment. That afternoon, he called her aside for another conversation. "Martinez, I saw what happened during the swim this morning." Sarah prepared to defend her actions, but Senior Chief Ramirez continued before she could speak. "That was good leadership. You found a way to help a teammate without violating training rules. Williams finished the exercise on his own, but your presence gave him the confidence he needed." "Senior Chief, you were trying to take care of your people. That's what leaders do. Remember that when you're a SEAL. Your job isn't just to complete missions. It's to bring your team home." The conversation marked another shift in Sarah's training experience. The instructors began watching her differently, evaluating her potential for leadership roles rather than simply testing her ability to endure punishment. Leadership opportunities in SEAL training were rare and significant. Candidates who demonstrated leadership potential during training often received additional responsibilities and evaluation as future team leaders. Sarah hadn't expected this aspect of her development, but she embraced it as another challenge to master. The fourth week of training introduced land warfare exercises that required tactical thinking under pressure. Candidates learned basic infantry skills, weapons handling, and small unit tactics. These exercises combined physical challenges with intellectual demands that tested decision-making abilities. Sarah found this phase of training engaging in ways that pure endurance tests weren't. She'd always enjoyed problem-solving, and tactical exercises required creative thinking combined with physical execution. The challenges were complex enough to be interesting while remaining demanding enough to eliminate candidates who couldn't adapt. During one night navigation exercise, her team was given coordinates for 3 checkpoints that had to be reached in sequence within a specific time limit. The route required crossing difficult terrain in darkness while carrying full combat equipment. Sarah volunteered to navigate, using compass and map reading skills she'd developed during years of hiking and camping with her father. The exercise tested her ability to make accurate calculations under pressure while leading teammates who were depending on her judgment. Her navigation proved accurate, and the team completed the exercise ahead of schedule. But, more importantly, her teammates had full confidence in her leadership throughout the exercise. The dynamic had shifted completely from their early training, when some candidates had doubted her capabilities. "Martinez," Petty Officer Johnson said as they prepared their gear after the exercise, "I owe you an apology. When training started, I wasn't sure you belonged here. I was wrong." "Johnson, you don't owe me anything. We're all figuring this out together. No, I need to say this. You've proven yourself every day. When Hell Week starts, I want you on my team." Similar conversations occurred with other candidates as the fourth week progressed. Sarah had earned their respect through consistent performance rather than demanding it based on principle. The integration was complete, and she was now regarded as one of the stronger candidates in the class. But Hell Week would test everyone in ways that previous training had only hinted at. Sleep deprivation, constant physical challenges, and psychological pressure would push all candidates beyond their previous limits. Many confident, capable candidates would discover during Hell Week that they'd reached their breaking point. On the Friday afternoon before Hell Week began, Senior Chief Ramirez addressed the remaining 18 candidates. 7 had quit during the first 4 weeks, unable to handle the basic demands of SEAL training. "Gentlemen and lady, starting Monday morning, we begin Hell Week. For the next 5 days, you'll be tested in ways that will reveal who you really are. Some of you think you know your limits. You're about to discover that you were wrong." He walked among the candidates as he continued. Hell Week isn't about physical fitness. Most of you are in good enough shape to survive the physical demands. Hell Week is about mental toughness. It's about choosing to continue when quitting would be easier. It's about finding strength you didn't know you had. The water temperature next week will be in the mid-50s. You'll spend hours in the surf, often at night, while we create scenarios that test your ability to think clearly under extreme stress. Some of you will quit in the first 12 hours. Others will make it to Thursday before they break. Senior Chief Ramirez stopped in front of Sarah. Martinez, you've done well in training so far. But Hell Week will test you differently than anything you've experienced. Are you ready? Yes, Senior Chief. We'll see. That weekend, Sarah made her final preparations for Hell Week. She organized her gear, reviewed tactical procedures, and mentally rehearsed the challenges she expected to face. But mostly, she rested and tried to store up energy for 5 days when rest would be impossible. She called her father Saturday evening to let him know what was coming. Hell Week starts Monday, she said without preamble. How do you feel about it? Ready. Maybe a little nervous, but mostly ready. Sarah, I want you to know something. Whatever happens next week, you've already proven everything you need to prove. You've made it further than 90% of people would even attempt. Dad, I appreciate that, but I'm not here to attempt anything. I'm here to finish. Sunday evening, she went to bed early, knowing it would be her last real sleep for nearly a week. Her alarm was set for 0400 Monday morning, when Hell Week would begin with a simulated combat scenario designed to shock candidates into the new reality of their training. Hell Week began at 0400 Monday morning with explosions, sirens, and instructors screaming orders through megaphones. Sarah jolted awake as simulated artillery rounds detonated outside the barracks, windows rattled from the concussions, and emergency lights bathed everything in red. Get up! Get up! Get up! We're under attack, instructors shouted as they burst through the barracks doors. Full gear. Move! 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 Candidates stumbled out of their bunks, grabbing equipment and uniforms in the darkness. This was the legendary Hell Week wake-up, designed to thrust them immediately into a state of controlled chaos that would continue for the next 5 days. Sarah had prepared for this moment, laying out her gear in precise order the night before. While some candidates fumbled for equipment in the confusion, she dressed quickly and efficiently, muscle memory taking over despite the shocking wake-up. Beach. 2 minutes. Anyone not on the beach in 2 minutes fails Hell Week. Senior Chief Ramirez's voice cut through the noise and confusion. The candidates ran toward the beach carrying their gear, some still pulling on boots or fastening equipment. Sarah arrived among the first group, fully dressed and ready for whatever came next. What came next was ice water. Welcome to Hell Week. Senior Chief Ramirez announced as candidates formed up on the sand. Your first challenge is a team exercise in the surf. You'll be working in boat crews, and your performance will determine which crew gets punished. The Pacific Ocean looked particularly uninviting in the pre-dawn darkness. Waves crashed against the shore with mechanical regularity, and the water temperature was exactly what had been promised, cold enough to quickly incapacitate unprepared individuals. Boat crews will enter the surf and link arms, Instructor Thompson continued. You'll remain in position while we conduct boat races. The losing crew stays in the water longer. Much longer. Sarah's boat crew waded into the surf together. The water was shockingly cold, even though she'd experienced it many times during the previous 4 weeks. The difference was that this time, they wouldn't be getting out after 20 or 30 minutes. Hell Week meant extended exposure to conditions that tested the limits of human endurance. The boat races were grueling competitions that required teams to carry heavy rubber boats through sand, over obstacles, and back into the surf for paddling races. Crews that finished last faced immediate punishment, more time in the cold water, additional calisthenics, or carrying boats overhead while running. Sarah's crew performed well in the first races, finishing in the middle of the pack and avoiding the worst punishments. But as the morning progressed and fatigue began affecting everyone's performance, the margins between success and failure became smaller. During the third boat race, their crew's teamwork began breaking down. Williams, who had struggled with swimming earlier in training, was having difficulty with the paddle work required for the water portion of the race. Johnson was pushing too hard during the running portions, leaving some team members behind. "We need to work together," Sarah called to her teammates during a brief rest between races. "We're only as fast as our slowest member, so we need to help each other instead of trying to be heroes." Her teammates nodded, but putting theory into practice while exhausted and cold proved challenging. When their crew finished last in the next race, they faced the dreaded punishment, extended surf torture. "Last place crew, back in the water," Instructor Thompson announced. "Link arms and wait for further instructions." They waded back into the surf and linked arms, forming a human chain facing the beach. The water temperature seemed even colder now that their body heat had been depleted by previous races and exercises. Standing chest deep in 54-degree water, Sarah felt the familiar effects of cold exposure begin immediately. Her muscles tensed, her breathing became shallow, and her skin burned where the waves contacted exposed areas. But she also felt something else, the certainty that she could endure whatever the instructors demanded. 2 years of cold water training in Texas lakes had prepared her for this moment. While her teammates began shivering violently within the first few minutes, she maintained better control of her body's responses. "Martinez," Williams whispered through chattering teeth, "how are you handling this so well?" "Practice," she whispered back. "Focus on your breathing and try to relax your muscles. Fighting the cold makes it worse." The instructors kept them in the water for 45 minutes. By the end, 2 teammates were showing early signs of hypothermia, loss of coordination, slurred speech, and violent shivering they couldn't control. The instructors finally called them out when it became clear that safety limits had been reached. "That was surf torture," Senior Chief Ramirez explained as they huddled around small fires to warm up. "During Hell Week, you'll experience much longer sessions. The crews that work together survive. The crews that fall apart get punished until they learn to work together." The first day of Hell Week continued with a series of challenges designed to establish the new reality of training. Boat races alternated with calisthenics, obstacle courses, and tactical exercises. Meals were brief and often interrupted by emergency scenarios that required immediate response. But the defining characteristic of Hell Week wasn't any single exercise. It was the relentless pace that never allowed candidates to fully recover from one challenge before facing the next. By evening, exhaustion was affecting everyone's judgment and performance. Sarah discovered that her preparation had been accurate in some ways and inadequate in others. She trained her body to handle cold water exposure and sleep deprivation, but she hadn't anticipated the psychological pressure of watching teammates struggle and sometimes quit. During the first night, 2 more candidates rang the bell. One simply couldn't handle the cold water exposure that dominated evening exercises. The other quit after failing repeatedly during tactical challenges that required clear thinking despite exhaustion. Watching classmates quit was harder than Sarah had expected. These weren't weak individuals who'd been hiding inadequacies during training. They were capable, motivated people who'd discovered that Hell Week pushed them beyond their personal limits. "It's hard to watch good people quit," Johnson said during a brief break between exercises. The remaining candidates were huddled around a small fire, trying to generate body heat before the next water session. "They're not quitting," Sarah replied. "They are making rational decisions based on their assessment of their capabilities. That takes courage too." Williams looked up from where he sat shivering near the fire. "Do you ever think about quitting?" "Every few minutes," Sarah answered honestly. "But thinking about it and doing it are different things." The second day of Hell Week introduced longer periods of surf torture combined with complex tactical scenarios. Candidates had to maintain operational effectiveness while dealing with hypothermia, sleep deprivation, and constant physical stress. Sarah's boat crew was assigned a mission that required them to swim to offshore boats, retrieve simulated intelligent materials, and return to the beach while evading instructor teams playing hostile forces. The mission had to be completed while the entire crew was suffering from the effects of extended cold water exposure. Planning the mission required clear thinking despite exhaustion and cold that made concentration difficult. Sarah found herself naturally taking a leadership role, coordinating her teammates' efforts and making tactical decisions while they struggled with the effects of hypothermia. "Martinez, you navigate," Johnson said through chattering teeth. "Williams and Thompson, you handle the retrieval. Davis and I will provide security." The mission execution went smoothly, with Sarah's navigation skills ensuring they reached the correct boat quickly and efficiently. Her teammates performed their assigned roles despite obvious physical distress from the cold water. But the return swim proved more challenging. Williams began struggling again, his swimming technique deteriorating as hypothermia affected his coordination. Davis was showing signs of more serious cold injury, including confusion and loss of fine motor control. Sarah made a command decision to modify their route, taking the team to a closer beach landing point even though it meant a longer run to their final objective. The decision potentially cost them points in the exercise, but it ensured all team members could complete the mission safely. "Good call on the landing point," Johnson said after they'd completed the exercise and were warming up around another fire. Davis was in trouble out there. "We complete missions as a team or we don't complete them at all," Sarah replied. "Individual performance doesn't matter if someone gets seriously hurt." Senior Chief Ramirez had been observing the exercise from a boat offshore. When he approached their team during the post-exercise debrief, Sarah expected criticism for the route modification that had cost them time. Instead, he focused on different aspects of their performance. "Martinez, explain your decision to change the landing point." Senior Chief Davis was showing signs of hypothermia that were affecting his swimming ability. The longer route to the original landing point would have put him at risk of serious cold injury. "So you prioritized safety over mission completion?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "Senior Chief, I prioritized completing the mission with the entire team rather than risking a team member for a marginal improvement in time." Senior Chief Ramirez nodded slowly. "That's the right answer. SEALs don't leave people behind, even during training. Your team completed the mission successfully because you adapted to changing conditions." The conversation reinforced lessons Sarah was learning about leadership under extreme stress. Technical competence wasn't enough. Leaders had to make decisions that balanced mission requirements with team capabilities, especially when those capabilities were being degraded by environmental conditions. The third day of Hell Week brought the most challenging water exercises yet. Candidates faced extended surf torture sessions that lasted multiple hours, broken only by brief periods for meals or tactical instruction. The cumulative effect of sleep deprivation, cold exposure, and physical exhaustion was beginning to break down even strong candidates. 3 more classmates quit during Wednesday's exercises, including one who'd been among the strongest performers during regular training. The combination of factors that made Hell Week so difficult proved too much for individuals who'd shown no previous signs of weakness. Sarah's own limits were being tested more severely than ever before. The cold water exposure was becoming genuinely dangerous, with her body temperature dropping to levels that required careful monitoring. Sleep deprivation was affecting her judgment and reaction times. Physical exhaustion was making even basic movements difficult. But she also felt something she hadn't expected, a growing confidence that she could survive whatever Hell Week demanded. Each challenge she completed successfully proved that her preparation had been adequate. Each hour she endured built evidence that she possessed the mental toughness required for SEAL operations. Thursday brought the exercise that would define the rest of her training and her reputation among the instructors. The scenario was straightforward. Boat crews had to complete an extended mission in the surf while instructors created a hostile environment designed to break team cohesion. The exercise combined long periods in cold water with tactical challenges that required complex coordination despite extreme physical stress. Sarah's boat crew had been reduced to 4 members by Hell Week eliminations. They were exhausted, cold, and operating on less than 6 hours of sleep over the previous 3 days. The margin for error had disappeared, and any significant mistake could result in elimination for the entire team. The exercise began before dawn, with crews entering the surf for what they were told would be a brief warm-up session. The warm-up lasted 3 hours, during which candidates were required to maintain formation in chest-deep water while instructors created scenarios that tested their ability to respond to commands despite hypothermia. By the end of the session, all 4 members of Sarah's crew were showing significant effects of cold exposure. Williams was barely coherent, responding to commands with obvious difficulty. Johnson's coordination was seriously impaired. Davis was shivering so violently that he could barely maintain his position in formation. Sarah was handling the cold better than her teammates, but she was far from unaffected. Her body temperature was dangerously low, her fine motor skills were compromised, and her thinking was slowed by the physiological effects of hypothermia. But when the instructors announced the next phase of the exercise, she was rear. The tactical swimming exercise that would define Sarah's Hell Week began with her team floating in formation 200 meters offshore. The Pacific Ocean around them was a deceptive calm, but the water temperature remained a brutal 54 degrees that sapped body heat with mechanical efficiency. Team leaders, listen up. Senior Chief Ramirez called from the safety boat positioned nearby. Your objective is a navigation buoy 800 meters to the northeast. Your team must arrive within a 2-minute window, maintain tactical formation throughout the swim, and be prepared for immediate action upon arrival. Sarah had been designated team leader after Johnson's hypothermia symptoms became too severe for complex decision-making. With only 4 team members remaining, every individual's performance was critical to mission success. She studied her teammates as they treaded water waiting for the exercise to begin. Williams was functioning but clearly struggling with the cold. Davis had regained some coordination after warming up during the briefing, but his stamina was questionable. Johnson was present and following orders, but his leadership capabilities were compromised by exhaustion and cold exposure. Listen to me, Sarah said quietly, positioning herself so all team members could hear her over the sound of waves. We're going to swim in diamond formation with me leading. Williams, you swim to my right. Davis, to my left. Johnson, you cover our rear position. She continued with tactical instructions that would govern their movement through the water. Maintain visual contact at all times. If anyone falls behind, signal immediately. We arrive together or we don't arrive at all. The swim began with Sarah setting a pace that balanced speed requirements with her team's diminished capabilities. Navigation in ocean swells required constant adjustment of their heading to compensate for current and wind effects. Leadership meant making continuous small decisions while managing her own hypothermia symptoms. After 20 minutes of steady swimming, Williams began falling behind. Sarah could see him struggling to maintain the stroke rate required to stay with the team. His technique was deteriorating as cold water sapped his coordination and strength. She faced a decision that would affect the entire team's performance. Slowing their pace to accommodate Williams might cause them to miss the required timing for the exercise. Maintaining their current speed might result in Williams being unable to complete the swim. Sarah made a command decision that drew on everything she'd learned about leadership during SEAL training. Formation change, she called to her teammates. Diamond formation becomes line formation with Williams second. The formation change allowed her to serve as a windbreak for Williams, reducing the energy he needed to maintain forward progress. Davis moved to cover Williams' weak side, providing additional drafting assistance. Johnson maintained rear security while monitoring the team's overall performance. The tactical formation change worked exactly as Sarah had planned. Williams' swimming improved immediately when he could draft behind her stronger stroke. The team's overall speed increased because they were working together more efficiently. But the exercise was far from over. As they approached the halfway point to their objective, Senior Chief Ramirez announced a complication designed to test their ability to adapt under stress. Team leaders, new intelligence indicates hostile forces near your objective. You must modify your approach to avoid detection while maintaining your arrival schedule. The announcement meant Sarah had to revise their tactical plan while continuing to navigate and manage her team's performance. She quickly assessed their options: a direct approach that risked simulated enemy contact, or an indirect route that would require faster swimming to meet timing requirements. Team modification, she called to her teammates. We're taking the northern route to avoid detection. That means increasing our stroke rate for the next 15 minutes. Williams immediately responded with concern. I don't know if I can handle a faster pace. Yes, you can, Sarah replied with absolute certainty. We've been swimming together for 4 days. I know exactly what you're capable of, and you can handle this. Her confidence in Williams proved justified. With encouragement and tactical support from his teammates, he maintained the increased pace without falling behind. The team cohesion that had developed during Hell Week allowed them to perform beyond their individual capabilities. As they approached their objective, Sarah could see that other boat teams were struggling with the exercise. One team had broken formation and was scattered across several hundred meters of ocean. Another team had someone in obvious distress, with instructors moving to provide assistance. Her team arrived at the objective buoy in tight formation, within the required time window, and ready for immediate action as ordered. They had successfully completed one of the most challenging exercises of Hell Week through teamwork and tactical leadership. Outstanding performance, Senior Chief Ramirez announced as they treaded water near the objective buoy. Team Martinez demonstrated textbook small unit tactics under extreme conditions. But the exercise wasn't finished. Your next task is to return to shore using stealth approach techniques while avoiding instructor teams simulating hostile forces. Detection means immediate return to starting position and repetition of the entire exercise. The return swim required different skills than the initial approach. Instead of speed and endurance, success depended on tactical movement that avoided detection while managing hypothermia that was affecting all team members after extended water exposure. Sarah led her team through a careful approach that used wave patterns and available concealment to avoid the instructor teams. Her navigation skills kept them on course while her tactical decisions kept them undetected. When they finally reached the beach, all 4 team members were suffering from significant hypothermia but had completed the exercise successfully. They demonstrated that effective teamwork could overcome individual limitations even under the most challenging conditions. Team Martinez, report to the warming area, an instructor called as they emerged from the surf. Medical evaluation, then debrief. The medical evaluation confirmed what Sarah already knew: all team members were hypothermic but within safe limits. Their core body temperatures were low enough to require warming protocols, but not low enough to require emergency treatment. During the warming process, her teammates expressed gratitude for her leadership during the exercise. I wouldn't have made it without your help out there, Williams admitted as they huddled around warming fires. We all made it because we worked together, Sarah replied. Individual performance doesn't mean anything if the team fails. But Senior Chief Ramirez had a different perspective when he approached for the post-exercise debrief. Martinez, step aside for a private conversation. Sarah followed him away from the warming area, wondering if she'd made some error during the exercise that required correction. Instead, Senior Chief Ramirez studied her with what appeared to be professional assessment. That was exceptional leadership under extremely difficult conditions. Your team completed the exercise faster than any other crew, maintained better formation throughout, and showed superior tactical adaptation when circumstances changed. Thank you, Senior Chief. The team performed well. The team performed well because you led them well. I've been watching you throughout Hell Week, and you've consistently demonstrated the kind of leadership we look for in SEAL operators. Senior Chief Ramirez continued with observations that surprised Sarah. You've handled the cold water exposure better than most candidates we've seen. Your navigation skills are outstanding. Your tactical decision-making under stress is at the level we expect from experienced operators, not candidates. Senior Chief, I've been preparing for this training for 2 years. I wanted to be ready for whatever Hell Week demanded. You were more than ready. The question now is whether you can maintain this level of performance through graduation and into advanced training. The conversation marked a significant shift in how the instructors viewed Sarah's potential. She was no longer being evaluated simply as a candidate who might survive SEAL training. She was being assessed as a future SEAL who might eventually lead others in combat operations. Thursday evening brought the traditional Hell Week event that tested candidates in ways that pure physical challenges couldn't, the log races that required perfect teamwork under conditions that made coordination nearly impossible. Teams of candidates had to carry telephone pole-sized logs through obstacle courses while instructors created scenarios designed to break team cohesion. Success required that all team members contribute equally while maintaining formation and communication despite exhaustion and hypothermia. Sarah's reduced team faced a significant disadvantage in the log races. With only 4 members instead of the standard 6, they had to carry proportionally more weight per person while competing against larger teams. But they also had an advantage that became apparent as the races progressed. They developed team cohesion through shared adversity that larger teams lacked. Every member knew exactly what to expect from every other member. Communication was efficient because they'd learned to work together under extreme stress. "We can't match their speed on flat ground," Sarah explained to her teammates as they prepared for the first race. "But we can outperform them on the technical sections where coordination matters more than raw strength." Her tactical analysis proved accurate. During sections of the race that required precise teamwork, navigating obstacles, changing direction quickly, adjusting formation, her team performed better than larger crews that had more strength but less cohesion. By the end of the evening, Sarah's team had won more races than they'd lost despite their numerical disadvantage. More importantly, they demonstrated the kind of teamwork that made SEAL operations successful, the ability to perform beyond individual capabilities through perfect coordination. Friday morning brought the final challenges of Hell Week. Candidates who'd survived 4.5 days of punishment faced exercises designed to confirm they possessed the mental toughness required for SEAL operations. The ultimate test was elegant in its simplicity. Candidates had to complete a series of basic exercises while instructors created the most psychologically challenging environment possible. There were no complex tactics to master, no navigation problems to solve, no technical skills to demonstrate. Success required only the will to continue when every instinct demanded quitting. Sarah stood in formation with the 9 other candidates who'd survived Hell Week as Senior Chief Ramirez explained the final exercise. "You've proven you can handle cold water, sleep deprivation, and physical exhaustion. Now we find out if you can handle being uncomfortable when there's no tactical reason to endure the discomfort." The exercise was surf torture in its purest form. Candidates would enter the water and remain there while instructors created scenarios designed to break their will. There would be no mission to complete, no tactical objective to achieve, no team performance to maintain. The only requirement was refusing to quit when quitting would provide immediate relief. The final surf torture session of Hell Week began with 10 candidates entering 54-degree Pacific water at 0800 Friday morning. Senior Chief Ramirez and 4 other instructors positioned themselves on the beach, clipboards in hand, prepared to conduct the ultimate test of mental toughness. "Link arms and face the beach," Senior Chief Ramirez commanded through his megaphone. "You will remain in position until instructed otherwise." Sarah felt the familiar shock of cold water contact as the surf reached her chest. After 4 days of repeated exposure, her body's response was somewhat adapted but still dramatic. Her breathing became shallow, her muscles tensed involuntarily, and her skin burned where the waves made contact. But she also felt something that separated her from candidates who'd quit earlier in the week, absolute certainty that she would not leave the water until ordered to do so. The decision was made. The only question was how long the instructors would test their resolve. Standing in formation with the 9 other survivors, Sarah looked down the line at candidates who'd proven their toughness through 4.5 days of Hell Week. Williams was there, having found reserves of strength he didn't know he possessed. Johnson had recovered from his hypothermia symptoms and regained his focus. Davis was shivering already but showed no signs of wavering determination. "Today we find out who has the mental toughness to be a Navy SEAL," Senior Chief Ramirez announced from the beach. "This is not about physical conditioning. This is not about technical skills. This is about refusing to quit when quitting would be easy." The first hour tested everyone's baseline tolerance for cold water exposure. Sarah felt the progressive effects of hypothermia beginning to affect her coordination and thinking, but she'd experienced these sensations many times during training. Her body's adaptation to cold exposure gave her a significant advantage over candidates who were still fighting their physiological responses. By the second hour, the psychological pressure intensified. Instructors walked along the beach with towels, hot coffee, and warming blankets clearly visible to candidates who were suffering in the frigid water. "Anyone ready to get warm?" Instructor Thompson called through his megaphone. "All you have to do is raise your hand and walk to the beach. Hot shower, warm clothes, and a good meal are waiting." Sarah heard one candidate's breathing become ragged as he struggled with the temptation to quit. The offer of comfort was psychologically powerful when contrasted with the misery of extended cold water exposure. But no one moved. 10 candidates remained in formation, arms linked, enduring conditions that would quickly incapacitate untrained individuals. During the third hour, the instructors escalated their psychological warfare. They brought out portable heaters positioned just close enough for candidates to feel occasional waves of warm air when the wind shifted. "Martinez," Senior Chief Ramirez called specifically to Sarah. "You've already proven you're tougher than most men. You don't need to suffer through this to make your point. Come get warm." The personal appeal was designed to test whether Sarah's motivation was based on proving something about gender equality rather than genuine desire to become a SEAL. The instructors needed to know that her toughness was authentic, not performative. "Senior Chief, I'm comfortable where I am," Sarah called back, her voice steady despite the chattering teeth of candidates around her. "Comfortable?" Senior Chief Ramirez sounded genuinely amused. "Martinez, you've been in 54-degree water for 3 hours. No one is comfortable in those conditions." "Senior Chief, comfortable is relative. This is exactly where I want to be." The exchange became legendary among SEAL training instructors. Sarah's response demonstrated that her mental framework was fundamentally different from candidates who were enduring the exercise. She wasn't suffering through something she had to survive. She was exactly where she chose to be, doing exactly what she prepared years to accomplish. By the fourth hour, medical concerns required instructor attention. Davis was showing signs of moderate hypothermia that bordered on requiring intervention. His speech was slurred, his coordination was significantly impaired, and his shivering had become violent. "Davis, medical evaluation," Senior Chief Ramirez called. "Exit the water and report to the medical team." Davis hesitated, clearly wanting to continue despite his physical condition. "Senior Chief, I can keep going." "Davis, that's not a request. Exit the water now." Davis reluctantly broke formation and walked to the beach, where medical personnel immediately began warming protocols. His hell week was over, but he'd proven his mental toughness by requiring medical intervention rather than voluntary withdrawal. 9 candidates remained in the water. During the 5th hour, Williams reached his breaking point. His hypothermia symptoms became severe enough to affect his safety, and he began showing signs of confusion that indicated dangerously low core body temperature. "Williams, you've proven yourself," Senior Chief Ramirez called. "Exit the water and get medical attention." Williams also tried to continue despite obvious physical distress. "Senior Chief, I want to finish this." "Williams, you have finished. You've completed Hell Week. Exit the water immediately." Williams reluctantly left formation and headed to the beach, where medical teams were waiting. Like Davis, he'd required medical evacuation rather than voluntary withdrawal, proving his mental toughness even as his body reached its limits. 8 candidates remained, linked arm in formation facing the beach. Sarah felt the effects of 5 hours in cold water throughout her body. Her core temperature was dangerously low, her fine motor skills were completely compromised, and her thinking was slowed by hypothermia. But she also felt something that surprised her: she could continue indefinitely if required. Her 2 years of cold water preparation in Texas lakes had developed physiological adaptations that gave her an advantage over other candidates. More importantly, her mental preparation had created a framework that redefined comfort and discomfort in ways that made this exercise manageable. "Martinez," Senior Chief Ramirez called again during the 6th hour. "I'm going to ask you one more time. Are you ready to get out of that water?" Senior Chief, are you ready for me to get out of this water? The response demonstrated that Sarah understood the exercise completely. This wasn't about her comfort or discomfort. This was about proving to the instructors that she possessed the mental toughness to endure any conditions required for SEAL operations. Negative, Martinez. Stay where you are. By the 7th hour, 2 more candidates reached medical limits and were ordered out of the water. Their bodies had reached the point where continued exposure risked serious injury, but, like the others, they required medical evacuation rather than voluntary withdrawal. 6 candidates remained in formation. The psychological pressure during the 8th hour was unlike anything Sarah had experienced. The instructors had exhausted their standard techniques for breaking candidate resolve and were improvising new approaches to test the remaining survivors. They brought families of some candidates to the beach, allowing brief conversations designed to create emotional pressure to quit. They offered specific incentives, immediate assignment to preferred duty stations, favorable fitness reports, recommendations for advanced schools. None of the remaining candidates wavered. "This is what mental toughness looks like," Senior Chief Ramirez announced to the other instructors. 6 candidates who have redefined their relationship with discomfort. Sarah heard the comment and realized that her understanding had been correct. This exercise wasn't punishment or hazing. It was a test of the psychological foundation that made SEAL operations possible. SEALs had to function effectively in conditions that would incapacitate normal individuals. The candidates still in the water had proven they possessed that capability. During the 9th hour, Johnson reached his physical limits and required medical evacuation. His withdrawal left 5 candidates, Sarah, Thompson, Garcia, Lee, and Murphy. 5 candidates remaining, Senior Chief Ramirez announced. This is now a test of will versus will. The water temperature hasn't changed. The conditions haven't changed. The only question is who wants to be a SEAL more than they want to be comfortable. Sarah looked down the line at her fellow survivors. Each was suffering from severe hypothermia, but none showed any indication of wanting to quit. They'd moved beyond the normal human response to discomfort and entered a mental state where continuing was easier than quitting. The 10th hour brought a development that none of the candidates expected. Senior Chief Ramirez entered the water himself, taking a position at the end of their formation. "Gentlemen and lady," he said as he linked arms with Murphy, "sometimes instructors need to remember what we're asking candidates to endure." The gesture was unprecedented in Sarah's experience of SEAL training. Instructors maintain professional distance from candidates, observing and evaluating rather than participating in exercises. Senior Chief Ramirez's decision to join them in the water was a sign of respect for what they'd accomplished. Standing in formation with an instructor who'd completed multiple combat deployments, Sarah felt validation for everything she'd believed about herself. She belonged in the water with these men not because she'd proven she was as tough as they were, but because she'd proven she was exactly as tough as the mission required. The 11th hour passed with 6 people in the water, 5 candidates and 1 instructor. No one spoke. No one complained. No one showed any indication of wanting to quit. Finally, Senior Chief Ramirez made the decision that ended the exercise. "That's enough," he announced. "Everyone out of the water. You've proven everything you need to prove." As they walked toward the beach together, Sarah felt the strange combination of relief and disappointment that marked the end of major challenges. Relief that the immediate discomfort was over, disappointment that the test was finished. On the beach, medical teams immediately began treating all 6 individuals for hypothermia. Sarah's core body temperature was 88 degrees, dangerously low but not life-threatening. Her recovery was faster than the other candidates, confirming that her cold water preparation had provided significant advantages. Martinez, Senior Chief Ramirez said as medical personnel wrapped her in warming blankets, "That was the most impressive display of cold water tolerance I've seen in 15 years of SEAL training. Thank you, Senior Chief. You understand that you just completed Hell Week." Sarah looked around at the 4 other candidates who'd finished the surf torture exercise. They were exhausted, hypothermic, and barely coherent, but they'd proven they possessed the mental toughness required for SEAL operations. "Senior Chief, we all completed Hell Week." "Yes, You did. Congratulations. You're no longer candidates. You're SEAL trainees. The formal Hell Week completion ceremony took place the following morning, after all participants had recovered from hypothermia and received medical clearance. Sarah stood in formation with 4 other survivors as senior officers officially recognized their achievement. But the real recognition had occurred in 54-degree Pacific water, when she'd proven that 2 years of preparation had been sufficient to overcome the ultimate test of mental toughness. 3 months later, Sarah Martinez graduated from basic underwater demolition SEAL training and received her SEAL Trident. She was the first woman to complete the program, but, more importantly, she'd completed it to the same standards required of every other SEAL. Her father attended the graduation ceremony, wearing his dress uniform and the proud expression of someone whose faith in his daughter had been completely justified. "So," he said after the ceremony, "how does it feel to be a superhero?" Sarah looked at her SEAL Trident, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. 2 years of preparation, 6 months of training, and 1 week in particular that had tested every belief she'd held about her own capabilities. "It feels like the beginning," she said. Everything up to now was just preparing for the real mission. She was right. Her journey to become a Navy SEAL was complete, but her journey as a Navy SEAL was just beginning. The cold water that had tested her limits during training would be nothing compared to the challenges that awaited her in actual SEAL operations. But she was ready. She'd proven that when they drenched her with ice water, they learned that Navy SEALs don't break under cold. They get stronger. The lesson would serve her well in the years ahead, when she would face challenges that made Hell Week look like preparation for the real test, proving herself in combat alongside the world's elite warriors. But that's another story, for another time. This story ended with a young woman from Texas standing on a beach in California, wearing the SEAL Trident she'd earned through preparation, determination, and an absolute refusal to quit when quitting would have been easier. She'd dreamed of being a superhero when she was little. Her father had been wrong about superheroes not being real. They were real. They just wore different uniforms than she'd imagined. As they waded into the Pacific Ocean for what would be the longest surf torture session of Hell Week, Sarah felt the same calm certainty that had carried her through every major challenge in her life. She prepared for exactly this moment, the test of pure will that would determine whether 2 years of preparation had been sufficient. The water was 54 degrees, exactly as it had been throughout Hell Week. But, this time, they would remain in it until the instructors were satisfied that every surviving candidate possessed the mental toughness required for SEAL operations. Standing chest-deep in the Pacific Ocean with 9 other candidates, Sarah prepared to face the ultimate test of everything she'd believed about herself. The exercise would reveal whether she possessed the absolute refusal to quit that defined Navy SEALs. As the surf torture session began, she felt ready for whatever came next. Boat crews will now conduct tactical swimming to offshore objectives, Instructor Thompson announced. Navigation must be precise, timing must be exact, and all team members must arrive together. Crews that fail any aspect of this exercise will repeat it until they succeed. Sarah looked at her teammates and realized that the next hour would determine whether they survived Hell Week or joined the growing number of eliminated candidates. The swimming exercise would push all of them beyond their previous limits, but it would also reveal whether months of preparation had been enough to carry her through the ultimate test of SEAL training. As she drifted off to sleep, Sarah's mind was calm. She'd spent 2 years preparing for this week. She'd survived 4 weeks of training that had eliminated 7 other candidates. She was physically ready, mentally prepared, and surrounded by teammates who trusted her capabilities. Hell Week would be the ultimate test of everything she believed about herself. In 5 days, she would either prove that she belonged among the world's elite warriors, or she would discover limits that ended her SEAL aspirations. But, as she fell asleep, Sarah felt the same quiet confidence that had carried her through every major challenge in her life. She was exactly where she belonged, facing exactly the test she'd always known she would face. Monday morning would reveal whether 2 years of preparation had been enough. When they finally emerged from the water, one candidate immediately walked to the brass bell and rang it 3 times. He was done. The first elimination of BUDS training. Senior Chief Ramirez watched the candidate gather his gear and leave, then turned to the remaining 23. That water was a gentle introduction. Tomorrow we'll stay in longer. Next week, even longer. By the time Hell Week arrives, you'll either be comfortable being uncomfortable, or you'll be gone. Sarah looked around at her fellow candidates as they toweled off and changed into dry clothes. Some looked shaken by the experience. Others appeared determined. A few seemed to be questioning their decision to attempt SEAL training. She felt none of these things. She felt like she'd finally found a place where she belonged.